Good afternoon, class. Today's topic is Chapter 9, Void Contracts. So, remember, we already studied in passing kung ano yung void contracts when we did the introduction to defective contracts. So, void contracts are the most defective because they do not produce any effect at all. And also, remember, in decreasing effectivity, ito yung pinakawalang effect. So, what you have to remember about void contracts are, remember, number 1, they produce no effect at all. And number 2, they are considered inexistent from the beginning. So, you have to realize as well na yung term na void contracts, it is a contradiction in terms because ang void contract technically hindi siya nag-exist. So parang wala. Pero binigyan natin siya ng pangalan. Anong tawag natin? Void contract. So remember the definition of a void contract. Also, take note of the special classifications according to the case of Ligues versus Lopez. This is jurisprudence decided by the Supreme Court. Ang tawag kasi sa cases decided by the Supreme Court ay jurisprudence. They are part of the law of the land. Sabi dun sa case na yan, there are two kinds of void contracts. Number 1, inexistent contracts. Paano naging inexistent itong mga contracts na to? They lack one or some or all of the elements. Remember, walang object or walang consent or walang cause or wala lahat. Or in case of formal contracts, they do not comply with the formalities which are required for existence. Ano bang example ng mga formal contracts? An example of a formal contract is, remember, a donation. In donation of property, kailangan yung donation is in writing or else it is void donation. In addition to that, the donation must be in a public instrument. So, paano ba nagiging public ang isang instrument? Remember, all instruments are private. Kailan nagiging public yan? Pagka pinanotaryo mo yung iyong private instrument, it will become a public document. So, yung donation ninyo, ipanotaryo nyo kay attorney para maging valid yung donation. Also, remember, if you are the donee, you are receiving something, your acceptance must also be in writing and also notarized. So, yung mga magulang ninyo na nagsasabi na binigyan na kayo ng lupa, sa inyo na itong lupa na kinatitirikan ng bahay natin, etc., etc., huwag kayong maniniwala, sinungaling sila. Hanggat walang nakasulat na deed of donation, hindi nakanotaryo, remember class, hindi effective ang donation. Also, in your part as the donee, kailangan yung acceptance mo ay written and also notarized. So this is the rule in acceptance, donation and acceptance of real property. Yan talaga ang rule. So formal contract yan and kailangan mo mag-comply with the formalities required by law for a donation to be valid. What else? Also illegal or illicit contracts, which we will discuss in 1411 and 1412. Remember, illegal or illicit contracts may produce effects under certain circumstances provided that the parties are not equally guilty. So what else do you have to remember about void contracts? The characteristics. So there are again several. As a general rule, there is no effect whatsoever. Walang rights ang parties under a void contract. So if they will go to court, hindi lang sila papansinin kasi wala lang kwenta yung pinasukan nilang contract. What else? It cannot be ratified. In 1409, the last paragraph, remember, sabi doon, a void contract cannot be ratified. Bakit? Kasi wala naman siya. Technically, it does not exist. So, what will you ratify? So, again, remember, in rescissible contracts, there is no need to ratify. In case of voidable contracts, you may or may not ratify. Depende sa iyo yan kung anong gusto mong gawin. As the injured party, you can choose to ratify or not yung voidable contract. Anyway, if you do not, it will remain valid contract. What else? In case of unenforceable contracts, remember here, class, that it needs to be ratified to produce force and effect. In case of void contracts, remember, it cannot be ratified. So also in 1409, the right to set up the defense of illegality cannot be waived. So what you have to remember about letter C is that if you are the defendant or the person against whom a void contract is being enforced, remember you always have a defense, yung illegality ng contract, and the defense cannot be waived. So pinagde-deliver ka nila ng shabu, ayaw mo mag-deliver, dinimanda ka pa nila, you always have a defense that the contract is illegal, and such defense, remember, cannot be waived. Also remember 1410, the action or defense for the declaration of inexistence does not prescribe. So if you want to file an action to declare yung void contract void, remember, yung action mo to file it does not prescribe. Hindi katulad ng annulment. If you remember, annulment under voidable contracts, it prescribes in general rule 4 years. In case of declaration of nullity, remember also your terms class, in case of voidable contracts, annulment. In case of void contracts, it is petition for declaration of nullity. Bakit may pagkakaiba? Kasi yung annulment, may effect yung contract at the onset. Ipapanullify mo, papatanggalan mo siya ng effect. Kaya nga siya annulment. Kasi remember, a voidable contract is valid until annulled. Kumbaga, nag-e-exist siya bago mo siya ipa-annul. So, hindi mo pwedeng i-deny na nung time na hindi mo pa siya napapa-annul, merong nag-exist na ganung klaseng contract. In case of a void contract, remember, from the beginning, void na siya, hindi na siya nag-e-exist. So, technically, walang contract. Ngayon, kailangan mong pumunta sa court and the courts will declare your contract null and void. Bakit mo gagawin yon? For convenience class, lalong-lalo na kung issue is whether or not the contract is actually void. So, mas maganda, pumunta ka sa court and have the court declare yung contract mo as void. Again, class, hindi mo pwedeng diskartehan na sabihin na yung contract ko ay null and void. Hindi pwede. Go to court and the courts, it is only the courts which can declare your contract null and void. So, remember, your action or defense for the declaration of inexistence does not prescribe. But, remember also this, it can be barred by laches. So, B-A-R-R-E-D, laches, L-A-C-H-E-S. So, laches is yung failure or neglect for an unreasonable time to file a declaration, a petition for an action for declaration of nullity of a contract. So, dahil sa sobrang tagal, unreasonable na, hindi siya magpe-prescribe, yes, yung action, but it can be barred by laches. So, bawal na ring i-file dahil sa neglect. So, remember, 1410. Also, the last one, hindi pala last, meron pang isa. 1421, the defense of illegality is not available to third persons who are not directly affected. But obviously, if you are directly affected by a void contract, pwede mong gamitin yung defense ng illegality. What else? There's an example in your book. Tignan nyo na lang. Also, it cannot give rise to a valid contract, 1422. So, if you remember the concept of novation in obligations, the last mode of extinguishment of obligations, remember in novation, you either change the object, you change the subject, or you change the conditions of a contract. So, in novation, at the onset, meron kang valid contract. Tapos, papalitan mo lang yung mga tao, papalitan mo yung object, papalitan mo yung condition. But, remember, if the contract is void, it cannot be novated. Because, ang wala, hindi pwedeng magbigay buhay sa meron. So, ang kailangan yung tandaan dyan na to give rise to a valid contract, kailangan yung original contract mo is also valid. So, kung halimbawa ang contract mo is mag-deliver ng shabu, magbabayad ng 500 for shabu. So, anyway, itong contract mo na ito, paano kung gusto ng parties na palitan na lang yung object, imbis na shabu, gawin na lang kaldero, ganyan. So, nung ginawang kaldero, pwede ba yan? Hindi pwede. Kung pag-uusapan natin ng technicalities, kasi pinalitan mo yung object. So, nagkaroon ng novation. Technically, yung contract to deliver shabu is a void contract. Hindi mo siya pwedeng palitan. Hindi mo pwedeng innovate. However, class, of course, the parties can enter into a new contract involving yung kaldero. So, yun ang kailangan nating tandaan. It cannot give rise to a valid contract. What else? Also, instances of void contracts. Marami ito. Number 1, contracts whose cause, object, or purpose is contrary to lamog PP. So, remember, illegal cause, illegal object. Ano ba yung illegal cause? Illicit sexual intercourse, illegal object, shabu, marijuana, etc., etc. Purpose is contrary to law. Para mangidnap ng mga bata, etc., sa tawi-tawi, ganyan. So, these are void contracts. What else do you have to remember? We already discussed this. If you do not remember at all, balikan nyo na lang. Contracts which are absolutely simulated or fictitious, again discussed before in chapter 2. So remember in chapter 2, yung last part, yung absolutely simulated or fictitious contracts, ito ay void. Bakit? There is a lack of an essential element. Which essential element is that? Balikan nyo sa chapter 2. What else? Contract without cause or object. Again, they are void for lack of an essential element. Either wala siyang cause or wala siyang object. Also, contracts whose object is outside the commerce of men. Ibig sabihin, they cannot be the subject of transactions, itong mga objects na to. Why? Because they are usually government property. Sidewalks, Mayon Volcano, etc., etc., Maria Cristina Park, yung paborito ninyo. So remember, these cannot be subject of transactions, at least of sale. But remember, pwede naman if it is a transaction for repair. But as a general rule, remember, objects outside the commerce of men, kung nagkaroon ka ng mga contract na ganyan, they are void contracts kasi hindi pwedeng ibenta yung mga yan. What else? Yung contracts which contemplate an impossible service. So this has to do with your personal obligations. If the service is impossible, hindi pwedeng gawin, magbuhat ng eroplano, etc., these are again void contracts. Also, pumatay ng tao, yan. What else? Also, contracts where the intention of the parties relative to the object cannot be ascertained, meaning hindi maintindihan kung ano yung object. So this provision has to do with chapter 5, interpretation of contracts. So remember, the first rule in interpretation sa contracts is kung malinaw yung contract, huwag kang mag-interpret. Now, kung malabo, dun ka lang mag-umpisang mag-interpret. Now, in chapter 5, there are several rules for interpretation. And now, using the several rules of interpretation, hindi mo pa rin ma-ascertain kung ano yung object ng contract. Remember, the contract is void. Kung sa chapter 5, ginamit mo na yung pinakamalakas mong weapon, lahat ng mga provisions, and also you add yung doctrine of greatest reciprocity of interest and the doctrine of least transmission of rights, hindi mo pa rin ma-determine kung anong object niyan, void contract. What else? Contract expressly prohibited or declared by law to be void. So there are several of that. So number 1, contracts upon future inheritance. Syempre, the property is not yours. It is your parents' property. So unless expressly authorized by law, may exceptions naman. So future inheritance kasi it's not yours. Number 2, hindi ka naman siguradong sa'yo ibibigay. Malay mo ibenta during the lifetime of your parents. This is ang pagbebenta talaga, hindi naman talaga siya void. But here, this contract is prohibited by law because it involves future inheritance. What else? Number 2, sale of property between husband and wife. So, bawal. Unless your property regime is CSP, complete separation of property. Now, pwede namang mangyari na nung kinasal kayo, ang inyong property regime ay ACP or CPG, pero you go to court and ask for judicial separation of property, in which case, pwede nang payagan yung sale of property between husband and wife. So, bawal yan to protect the creditors, remember. Kasi may utang si wife, tapos anong gagawin niya? Lahat ng properties niya, itatransfer niya kay husband. Walang mahabol ang mga creditors. So, kawawa naman. This is designed for the protection of creditors. What else? Also, purchase of property who are specially disqualified by law. So, in B and letter C, remember, this is relative incapacity. Some people are absolutely incapacitated to enter into contracts. Diniscuss na natin yon. Now, in case of relative incapacity, they are otherwise qualified, but in relation to a particular person, a particular transaction, they are not qualified. Kaya nga, relative. Ngayon, itong husband, by himself, he is capacitated to contract. But remember, if the contract is with the wife, it is a void contract. Same is true with purchase of property by persons who are specially disqualified by law. This is the important part because of their position or relation with the person. Dapat pala in-underline ko yan. Let us say, for example, a guardian cannot buy the property of the ward. Remember, a guardian is by himself capacitated. Or else, bakit siya naging guardian kung hindi siya capacitated? Eh, di ba ang guardian, sinong inaalagaan niya? Yung incapacitated. So, if he is incapacitated himself, anong kwenta nun? But remember also that the guardian cannot buy the property of the ward because ang pinoprotect ng law dito is the fiduciary relationship between ward and guardian. Fiduciary trust and confidence relationship between guardian and ward. Also, remember, donation between spouses, hindi yan pwede to protect the weaker spouse. Kasi baka mag-take advantage yung stronger spouse. So, pwede naman yung donations, moderate gifts during occasions, anniversary, birthdays, pwede naman. Alangan di kayo magbigay, di ba? Baka mamaya ipaanal yung kasal ninyo. So anyway, what else? Testamentary provision in favor of a disqualified person. So ito yung mga provision sa isang last will, kaya nga siya testamentary. So, binibigyan mo ng mana ang isang disqualified person. Example ng disqualified person here is yung mga attesting witness. So, yung mga witness sa will mo, hindi ka pwedeng magkaroon ng mana na ibibigay sa kanila. Hindi mo sila pwedeng pamanahan. Yan, mas maganda yung pagkasabi ko na yun. Hindi mo sila pwedeng pamanahan. Now, a testamentary provision in favor of the attesting witnesses to your will shall invalidate yung will. What else? Hindi pala yung will, yung testamentary provision lang pala. What else? Stipulation that household service is free. Bawal din yan because it is involuntary servitude. Prohibited by the Constitution. Dapat bayaran nyo. What else? Last one, members of Congress are prohibited from being financially interested in any contract with the government, yan, or any subdivision thereof. So, mga members ng Congress, bawal makipag-deal sa gobyerno. There is here conflict of interest. So, let's talk about the exceptions to the general rule that a void contract produces no effect at all. The exceptions are found in 1411 and also in 1412. So remember, in 1411, the act is illegal and also criminal. In 1412, the act is illegal but there is no crime committed. Pwede yun. So anyway, remember, illegal and criminal contracts, it can happen that number one, both parties are in pari delicto. So remember, in pari delicto is both parties are equally guilty. What is an example of this? A contract to buy and to sell pirated DVDs. So, bawal magbenta ng pirated DVDs. Bawal din ang bumili ng pirated DVDs. Hindi natin napapansin yan kasi these are simple things na akala natin okay lang. But these are actually criminal offenses. To buy and to sell pirated CDs, DVDs, etc. etc. So anyway, pumunta ka sa F. Tanyedo, bumili ka sa isang nagbebenta ng pirated DVDs ng isang box ng Blu-ray pa yung gusto mo, Blu-ray. So anyway, binayaran mo na, hindi din deliver ng seller. Kung ikaw ang buyer, anong gagawin mo? Pupunta ka sa court. Tapos magrereklamo ka doon. You will try to recover your money or to have the pirated DVDs delivered. Hindi pwede yung class. Because remember, when you go to court, hindi ka papansinin ng korte. Bakit? Because you entered into a contract which is obviously illegal and also criminal. You are committing a crime. Sa palagay mo, tutulungan ka ng court? Hindi. The courts will leave you as you are. Yun ang sabi ng courts. The courts will leave them as they are. Because kahit na nakipagkontrata sila, even if there is injury on the part of one, because both of them are guilty of a criminal offense by entering into an illegal contract, there is no recourse in the court. So, wala silang mapapala. And, remember also, the parties shall have no right of action against each other. Hindi sila pwedeng magdemanda. Kasi nga, pagka nagpunta sila sa court, wala silang mapapala doon. The courts will leave them as they are. What else? Both shall be prosecuted. Ayan na eh. Imagine mo, pumunta ka sa court, mamaya ikaw pa ang makukulong. So, remember, crime yan. What else? The things or the price of the contract and the effects will be confiscated in favor of the government. So, yung pera mo, the government can confiscate it if they can recover it. And also, yung mga pirated DVDs, kung nandun pa sa seller, they can also confiscate that. So, remember, illegal and criminal. Ito yung 1411 when both parties are in pari delicto. But what if both parties, they are guilty but they are not equally guilty, or maybe one is innocent, one is guilty. So remember, only one party is guilty in delicto but not in pari delicto. So both parties are not equally guilty. So remember here, an example is bumili ka sa isang seller, nakita mo sa Eftañedo, bumili ka ng mga parang halaman, yan, bumili ka ng halaman. So, hindi mo alam na itong halaman na to ay illegal pala. Yan. Ito namang seller, akala niya alam mo kung ano yung binibili mo. So, anyway, later on, nagbayad ka, tapos hindi niya dineliver yung halaman. So, magdedemanda ka. In that case, remember, class, o sabihin na lang natin minor ka para malinis. Yan, minor ka. So, in which case, class, remember, even if you enter into that contract, wala kang liability kasi nga ikaw ay minor. Ikaw yung innocent party. So, the rules are, kung halimbawa hindi din-deliver ni seller yung binibili mo, the guilty party will be prosecuted kasi nagbebenta siya ng illegal na halaman. Huwag na lang natin sabihin kung ano yon. Hindi ko rin alam kung ano yon. And number 2, the instrument of the crime or object of the contract will be confiscated. So, kukunin nila yung halaman mo, class. What else? Number 3, the innocent one may claim what he has given. So, nagbayad na yung minor. So, yung minor can claim yung recover his money. Or if he has not given anything yet, by the terms of the contract, meron siyang obligation to comply with something. Remember, he will not be bound anymore by that promise. So, yun ang kailangan natin tandaan sa one party is guilty but not equally only one party is guilty. So, anyway, take note also of illegal contracts but not criminal. So, the act here is illegal but the contract, it does not constitute a crime. So, remember, these are the rules in 1412. First, when both parties are in pari delicto. So, both of them are equally guilty. I'm not sure if you have an example in your book. I will take a look at the example in mine. Yes, I think we have the same example. Mahirap mag-isip ng mga examples dito eh. So, the example given in your book is X and Y agreed, X agreed to live as common law wife. So, mag-live-in sila ni Y. Sabi ni Y, pagka nakipag-live-in sa kanya si X, bibigyan niya raw ng parcel of land. So, here the consideration is immoral kasi medyo tabu sa atin ang live-in noon. But personally, I don't think it's, anyway, my opinions do not matter. The law is the law. So anyway, here class, if that is the case, ang pag-live-in, remember, is an immoral, illegal act. but there is no crime committed here, especially kung pareho naman silang single. So anyway, both parties here are equally guilty. If naibigay na yung donation, yung parcel of land doon sa kay X, remember, Y cannot recover anymore. What else? If hindi pa naman na-deliver, neither party may also demand performance of the other's undertaking. So in number 2 class, remember, only one party is guilty. The contract is illegal, but it is not criminal. So almost same example. Minor lives in with a married man for a price, or let us say the married man promised to give again a house and lot. So remember here class, that only one party is guilty, the minor being innocent all the time. What are the rules? If the guilty party already gave the house and lot, he will lose what he has given by reason of the contract. What else? The guilty party cannot ask for the fulfillment of the other's undertaking. So kung hindi pa na-fulfill ng innocent party, hindi pwedeng i-demand nung guilty party yung fulfillment ng obligation sana noong innocent party. And the innocent may demand the return of what he has given under the contract. So if it is possible to ask for a return, innocent may request for a return of what he has given under the contract. And also, corollarily, innocent party cannot be compelled to comply with his promise. Anyway, the guilty party cannot demand fulfillment of the promise of the innocent party. Obviously, the innocent party cannot be forced to comply with his promise. So remember, here, may konting effect yung mga illegal contracts natin in such a way na the innocent party can always keep what he has already received under the contract. So yun ang kailangan nating tandaan. 14, 11 and also 14, 12. So also in addition to that, marami rin tayong other void contracts which are mentioned throughout the chapter, but these are the rules for recovery of the innocent parties. So 13, recovery of excessive interest. Remember, I used the term here excessive. I did not use the term usurious because again, wala na tayong usury law, wala na tayong concept ng usurious interest. Ang meron na lang tayo ay excessive interest. Remember class, if the interest is excessive, the debtor who paid for the interest can recover not only what is in excess of that is allowed by law, but can recover the entire interest. So kung ang interest ay 10%, let us say the interest allowed by law is around 6% lang per annum, but the interest there is 10% per annum. Hindi niya lang pwedeng i-recover yung 4% excess, but he can recover yung buong 10% excessive interest. So yun ang kailangan yung tandaan. Entire interest agreed upon may be recovered. Now, what you have to remember also in 1413 and in connection with jurisprudence, kung hindi nyo po alam yung term na jurisprudence, ito yung mga decisions ng Supreme Court na which becomes part of the law of our land. So, law din sila. So anyway, in decisions of the Supreme Court, nakita ko mga interest rate 2.5, 3%, okay pa as long as it is a short-term loan. But remember also that the legal rate of interest again is 6% per annum. What else? 1414, effect where contract entered into is for an illegal purpose. So in 1414, remember, pwedeng i-recover yung ibinayad mo sa illegal contract na yan. Provided class here na hindi natuloy yung pinag-usapan sa contract. So the usual example here is A asked B to kill C for a price. So si B papatayin niya si C for a certain price. So itong si A binayaran na niya si B. So bago pa mapatay ni B si C, nagbago na yung isip ni A. Tapos ni-repudiate niya yung contract. So there is repudiation of contract, kinancel niya. So, pagka-cancel niya ng contract, remember, there is no damage to a third person, purpose has not been accomplished, yung si A can recover his money if public interest will be served thereby. So, kailangan yung tandaan, the court may also allow recovery kasi nagbago naman yung isip niya, etc., etc. And again, in 1415, recovery by an incapacitated person. So, ang kakontrata ng person of legal age here is a minor or an insane person. So, in 1415, the law allows recovery if the interest of justice so demands. So, nakakatakot ito kasi remember, in case of 1415, the law does not require that the purpose is not accomplished. So, kung halimbawa, baliw, binayaran ka niya para patayin mo yung mga magulang niya, pwede niyang makuha uli yung pera niya if the interest of justice demands. So, it depends on the courts. Whether or not napatay mo yung magulang or the purpose is accomplished does not matter. It is not required for recovery. What else? 1416, where the contract is not illegal per se, there can be recovery. So, ang mga contracts which are illegal per se are contracts na talagang kahit na anong gawin mo ay void. Contract para pumatay ng tao is illegal per se. Ano yung mga contract na kabaliktaran ng illegal per se? Contracts which involve acts which are illegal per accidents. ACCIDENS. So, contracts acts which are illegal per accidents are not illegal by themselves, but because there is a law prohibiting it, they become illegal contracts. So, ang mga example ng mga contracts which are illegal, not illegal per se or illegal per accidents are contracts wherein Filipino will sell a land to an alien or a foreigner. Bawal sa batas natin. Selling is not illegal per se. But remember here, if you sell to an alien, it becomes illegal because there is a law, actually it is the Constitution, which prohibits sale to aliens. So ngayon, if you seller ka, you sell your land to an alien, the law will permit recovery. Bakit? Because public policy will be enhanced. So, pagka nagbenta ka sa alien, ba't alien ang tawag ano? So anyway, pagka nagbenta ka sa alien or foreigner, you can be allowed to recover the land. Para nga naman maalis yung land sa kamay ng isang foreigner who is not allowed to own lands in the Philippines. So what else? 1417, recovery of amount paid in excess of the ceiling price. So remember the ceiling law. It is a statute which will fix the ceiling price for basic commodities. So yung mga basic commodity na binebenta, pwedeng mag-set ng ceiling price or highest price. Hindi ka pwedeng mas tumaas doon. Usually nangyayari to tuwing may calamity, as you have already experience. Noong calamity, yung alcohol, ni-regulate nila yung price, nagkaroon ng ceiling price. So, pwedeng gawin ng gobyerno yan. Anyway, kung ang ceiling price ng alcohol, tulad nung pandemic is, yung isang gallon is 500 yata, the ceiling price, I'm not sure actually, nanguhula lang ako. Pero, pagka binenta sa'yo yan ng 600 pesos, remember, class, that it is a sale the price is in excess of the ceiling price. Now, remember, pwede mong i-recover not the whole price, of course, because you received the alcohol anyway, but you can recover the amount paid in excess of the ceiling price allowed by law. Para walang nagte-take advantage. Kasi sa totoo lang, nag-take advantage talaga yung mga seller noong pandemic. Even masks, especially yung mga mask, grabe. What else? Also, void yung mga contracts na yun, natandaan nyo. Actually, void payment. Anyway, void payment as to the excess. Ang hirap ng law, is very wordy. So anyway, 1418, recovery of additional compensation for services rendered beyond time limit in case of employees. So the maximum number of hours of work for employees is 8 hours. Now, if you work for more than 8 hours, remember class na kung sobra-sobra sa 8 hours ang trabaho mo, you can recover overtime pay for the work in excess of 8 hours. So there are percentages of your wage kung saan na idadagdag nila doon sa iyong kikitain bilang overtime pay. So also may mga exempted dito sa law na to, which employees do not enjoy yung 8 hours a day na work. They are always on call, or they can exceed 8 hours a day and they cannot demand overtime pay. Ay, nagbiminata na ako. So anyway, tignan nyo yan, basahin nyo yan, malay nyo itanong ko. What else? Also remember 1419, recovery of amount of wage less than minimum fixed. So it is the Regional Tripartite Wages and Productivity Board which determines kung ano yung minimum wage. Now, kung may minimum wage, I'm not sure how much the minimum wage in Tarlac City is at all. Wala akong idea. Pero my former students, the last time I asked, 400 daw, 450 if I'm not mistaken, 440. Anyway, if that is the minimum wage, tapos you enter into a contract of employment where you will receive not 440, but you will receive 200 pesos. So, pumayag ka na kasi desperada ka eh. But remember class here that you can recover yung amount na, yung balance, which yung deficiency. And remember also, plus interest, and employer will be criminally liable. So, yun ang kailangan nating tandaan. What is the effect also of illegality in case of indivisible or divisible contract? So, remember, if the consideration is single, entire and single, remember, aray ko, ang sakit naman ng salitang single, the contract, remember, is also indivisible. The whole contract is void. So, ang example yata sa book nyo, if I'm not mistaken, shabu plus kotse for 100,000 pesos. So, remember, the whole contract is void. Now, if you can separate the consideration, para sa shabu, 500. Para sa kotse, 99,500. If you can separate, remember the consideration, that part which pertains to the car, remember, will remain a valid contract because the contract there now is divisible. Yan. Here in number 2, contract is divisible when the consideration is made up of several parts. So, kung yung shabu is 500, yung kotse is 99,500, remember, the contract may be enforced with respect to the legal provisions. Yan. So anyway, that is all for void contracts. Next week, we will be studying partnerships. I will send the book to you. It's a law book. That's the best I can do. PDF. Yun ang PDF na nahanap ko. But if you have your own book, you can order via online stores. Hindi ko nababanggitin kung ano. Mas maganda kung meron kayong sarili nyong libro. Maganda pa rin yung nasusulatan. Mahirap yung PDF class. So anyway, I will see you tomorrow class. Thank you.